I found out at my husband's funeral just how big of a piece of crap our son is. Yeah, you might be wondering, why did I find out at the funeral? Well, my husband left me a clue after he went to the grave, and I'm going to share with you the clue that made me realize how disgusting my baby boy is. Hello, I'm 57, and I hate to share something so private and personal with you all, but I feel like I have nowhere else to turn. My whole life has been turned upside down, and I feel backed into a corner. I know that life has its ups and downs, but what's happened in my life lately has me feeling like giving up. I could use any thoughtful or constructive advice I can get from you people out there. First, I should probably warn you that this post will deal with matters related to a sexual assault. I know these are sensitive, traumatic topics for many, so I just want to throw that out there. Aside from that, there's also a lot of background info I need to go over, so this is going to be a long post. My husband, Bill, always took care of me and our 2 children. We have twins, Brandon and Bella. We had what appeared on the outside to be a perfect, idealistic family life. Of course, as we know it's the case with life, there's often skeletons in your closet, something lurking beneath the cracks. My husband was a successful businessman who was well known across the community. Our daughter Bella was the school valedictorian, a star track and field runner, and an overall great achiever, which I and Bill were immensely proud of. When it came to our son Brandon, however, it was a different story. Despite Bella and Brandon being twins, things always seemed to be a bit more difficult for Brandon right from the get-go. He had social issues. He did not seem to work well with other students. He was always having problems at school, whether it was fighting with his classmates, making poor grades, or just being generally disruptive during instruction time. It seemed like Brandon would never ever just calm down. I'll admit part of the problem might have been how much we doted on Bella. I know that he was jealous of her growing up and always felt as if he lived in her shadow. Bella, despite all her achievements and accolades and, always making me and Bill proud, was always a bit distant. While she kept her nose to the grind and was highly motivated in certain areas of life, she was always a bit socially withdrawn, just like Brandon. Me and Bill was always social butterflies who loved networking and shooting the breeze with people, so it always seemed strange to us that both our offspring seemed to have these issues with socialization. Bella and Brandon especially butted heads quite often, you see. Twins typically have an unbreakable bond between them, but it was always different for Bella and Brandon. They always seemed to be bickering, and I know siblings are supposed to fight and have rivalries and other issues. It's part of growing up, but this was different. Things between them never relaxed even as they got older, and I must admit Brandon was the instigator in most of these issues. He took advantage of Bella's meek and mousy nature, and would often bully and belittle her. I think he just wanted to punish her for receiving more praise than he did, and me and Bill always told Brandon he could accomplish anything he wanted in life if he just took the time to apply himself. But the advice seemed to fall on deaf ears. He had tried a one-on-one therapy, as well as family therapy where Bella and Brandon could try and work out their differences with a professional mediator present. But these seemed to create more resentment between them, and ultimately likely did more harm than good. Nothing ever seemed to work, and when things did not go the way that we wanted them to with Bella and Brandon, my husband Bill would often throw up his hands and retreat to go immerse himself in his work. I tried not to object because I knew how important the job was, not only to Bill, but to our livelihood as a family. See, Bill was keeping the roof over our heads, keeping the food on our table, and keeping the lights on, but there were often times I felt like I was left alone to do the legitimate parenting duties, without any help. Bill would often use the excuse of work to get out of having to deal with some of the less fun aspects of parenting, like disciplining the kids, shopping for clothes, making lunches, and dealing with school officials when a child gets in trouble and so on. I sucked it up and dealt with it because I knew Bill was busy, but things often seemed to ball up and get worse and worse as problems were continually ignored and swept under the rug. I regrettably admit that even I gave up at times. Sometimes I felt as if I should have never been a parent at all. Such is the feeling of cluelessness and helplessness that would often consume me. As the kids got older, the same problems continued to spiral and new problems began to arise. Bella was always fiercely independent and generally someone me and Bill felt that we did not have to worry about. But I think this manifested in the form of Bella feeling as if we neglected her. We never meant to neglect her. It was just glaringly obvious that Brandon needed more of our attention. We could give Bella our credit card, tell her to go get groceries, and we could trust her to return with the groceries and our credit card just as we had asked. Brandon would likely go buy himself a new video game and maybe some junk food and call that groceries. Things like that seems like innocent, selfish immaturity in the young, but me and Bill expected this sort of behavior to subside. Still, Bella became more withdrawn, and I think she began to resent the fact that we placed more responsibility on her once it became clear and more clear that we could not trust Brandon with much of anything in the realm of responsibility. The wedge was growing greater, but me and Bill were often blind, or perhaps we were merely in denial. Brandon always had relationship problems. He was a handsome boy who inherited quite a deal of good looks and charm from his father. So Brandon never had a problem getting the girlfriends growing up. His problem was keeping them. He just never seemed to develop the maturity to handle a relationship, and while me and Bill would always want to give our son the benefit of the doubt when Brandon complained of yet another one of his relationships crumbling away, we began to realize early on that the common denominator here was always Brandon. Brandon's behavior in relationships was much like his approach to the other facets of his life. He was selfish and controlling and did not seem to care much about the perspectives or desires of others. Brandon's mindset was me, 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 all the time. He never seemed to learn that a relationship is a two-way street and that girlfriends and romantic partners in general are not meant to be replacement mothers who do whatever you want at every beck and call. We thought Brandon would eventually learn, but he's 28 and still has the same problems with self-sabotaging every single decent relationship he winds up in. He's thrown away some relationships with some women me and Bill thought were great fits for him. But Brandon always has some sort of problem he isn't mature enough to overcome. And so he inevitably ends up pushing these women away. He either dumps them and gets mad when they move on, or they dump him and he gets mad. I mean, it's a never-ending type of cycle. When the twins graduated high school, Brandon did not even bother going to college. Bill hooked up my son with an easy office job at a large company my husband ran. Brandon had tried various jobs but never seemed to fit in anywhere, especially not jobs where he would be expected to work with others on a team. He was mentally incapable of accomplishing this, so Bill got him an easy job deep in the office where our son would have a job that kept him away from interacting with other people. He would see virtually nobody, and virtually nobody would see him or even know where he worked there. Neither I nor my husband were necessarily proud of this arrangement, but we felt it was the only way that we could keep our son out of trouble. We could not trust him to do the right thing, left to his own devices, especially since we knew if it were up to him, he simply would not work a job whatsoever. Bella, on the other hand, was completely opposite to Brandon. Bella was immediately accepted into the best, most prestigious university in the state, and her grades were good enough that she was able to secure a scholarship that covered all of her college expenses. Of course, me and Bill were so proud of Bella and all that she had accomplished. We had mainly just placed a bit too much pride in Bella's achievements and status. Frankly, I think me and Bill might have been overcompensating to make up for the shame we felt towards Brandon and his lack of achievements. In the end, Bella did us no favors. As soon as Bella graduated from college, she took a job far away, all the way across the country, and moved away from us, with almost less to no contact. Bella was also, finding some excuse to never visit the family on holidays. Years would go by without me and Bill getting to see our daughter. We would post about her achievements on Facebook and brag about her to anybody who would listen, but it never mattered to her. She was living her own life, and as much as me and Bill wanted to respect that, it truly hurt that she seemed to want nothing to do with us or the family. Holidays became depressing as we had only Brandon around to remind us of our mistakes and failures as parents. As time went on, the relationship between Bill and Brandon grew more and more tense, especially as Brandon would often blow off work and slack off in regards of what little responsibilities that he had. I began to feel as though Bill and Brandon truly hated each other. It was in my nature to keep the peace and be polite, but in hindsight, I now wish that I had confronted the two of them and demanded a more open, healthy communication. One thing this family never learned to do was communicate like healthy, grown adults. Now that I've gotten a lot of that out of the way, fast forward to today for the reason I'm even writing this post. Unfortunately, my husband Bill tragically passed away recently, and it sent me reeling into a world of grief, and I don't even know it was possible to be this grief-stricken. Me and Bill were together for over 30 years, so it truly feels like I've lost a piece of myself. The passing of my husband and the stress that it all brings is bad enough, but there's something else I need to discuss with you all today, and that's been depriving me and just getting me to go crazy. I truly feel like I'm at my wit's end here. The funeral procession was nice and pleasant, or at least nice and pleasant as things could be for a funeral. It was a proper send-off for a great man who was beloved and respected by the whole community. But it made me sad as Bill was being lowered into the grave, knowing that for all the love and respect he commanded from the community and his peers, he could not get the same from his own family. Bella claimed she had to miss the funeral due to a work deadline, and this absolutely broke my heart. I wanted Bella to be by my side. Instead, I had Brandon. I could tell Brandon has been drinking before the funeral, likely to calm his nerves, but it was disrespectful and reprehensible to me at the same time. Then, the worst thing possible happened. Brandon spat on my husband's grave. That's right, his own damn father. He cursed him out and started ranting about how Bill never loved him and how it's rotten and dirty that my husband did not leave him anything in the will. I admittedly thought it was strange Bill left absolutely nothing for Brandon, but I knew now it was not the time or place to get into a big fuss about it. I could barely contain myself from sobbing, and I felt like I was going to have an absolute panic attack. So, I removed myself from the situation and I went home. It was hard going home to such an empty home, knowing I'd never hear Bill's voice again. Luckily, I at least had the place to myself and did not have Brandon around to deal with. Me and Bill have been paying for his apartment across town for several years now. Lazy good for nothing. When I got home, I found the strangest thing in me in Bill's bedroom. It was a sealed envelope with my name on it, and inside it was a letter from Bill. The letter detailed everything, and while things made more sense after reading it, they also made me even less sense in a way. You see, Bill explained to me that he was leaving me with a $1 million shell company. This was great news, of course. He also explained that I was under no circumstances allowed to share any of the money with Brandon. He explained the reason he hated Brandon was because Brandon had a sexual assault charge on a 14-year-old when he was 17, and Bill said the reason he never told me is because he knew it would break my heart so much, and he thought that I would go to the authorities. Bill admitted that he used his power and influence in the community to have the crime swept right there under the rug without anybody even knowing about it. And he paid a considerable sum of money to the family of the girl Brandon did his assault to, and Bill also admitted that this single incident plagued his thoughts for the rest of his days, and he felt great shame and absolute guilt. Not just over Brandon, but over what he had done to get to the incident scrubbed away. I was flabbergasted, and I still am. I mean, how in the world should I even come to terms with this? First, I lost my husband, and now I find out my son is good for nothing and an abuser. It's from my own husband's words, and he would not lie about this. What should I do with this? Guys, please let me know and help me. I'll update you soon enough. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. I hope you're having a great day. Today's story is an emotional one. However, it might change in just a few updates. If you guys are new to the channel and you want daily stories just like today, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Okay, let's jump into the update. Update number 1. Hello, everyone out there. I'm here with an update for you all, and first I'd like to say thank you from the bottom of my heart to those of you who left kind and supportive comments for me. Right now, I feel so isolated and alone. It's hard enough dealing with the loss of my husband, and Now this stunning revelation about my son Brandon has rocked my world from its very foundations. I wanted to ask you all for your thoughts on another thing. So, the family planned a luncheon to celebrate Bill's life. It was held at the Outback Steakhouse, Bill's favorite place. It was supposed to be a peaceful and pleasant affair, one where we could all relax and look back fondly on my husband's life. Instead, the entire time my mind was consumed with the fact that the letter revealed my own son Brandon was an abuser. It was hard simply interacting with him at all. Sitting there at the table today, I looked over and noticed there wasn't an ounce of grief on Brandon's face. I know we have different ways of just showing a grief, but it was just so obvious to me that he did not care about his father at all. To top it all off, I noticed Brandon's girlfriend Diana had a black eye and some bruises. Normally, I would not think much of it, obviously, but considering recent revelations, I can't help but worry about what happened to her eye. What should I do? Should I ask Brandon about this? Update number 2. Hello everyone, OP with another update. I decided to take everyone's advice from the last post, and I confronted Brandon about the contents of the letter and the bruise on Diana. I invited Brandon over for a cup of coffee and a chit-chat. He seemed to think this was weird enough, and me and Brandon have never been so close in recent years. After awkwardly exchanging some pleasantries, I decided to cut right to the chase. Brandon had already made a snide remark about Bill for not leaving him any money, and I wanted to drop any pretenses here. I produced a copy of the letter and showed it to Brandon. I told him that the reason Bill never left him anything was because of the abuse of the girl when he was a teenager. Brandon immediately gets defensive and began denying the allegations, but he also did not look too surprised when I confronted him about it. He looked as if he had prepared this speech before. I asked him why Bill would make something up like this, and Brandon's response was that his father had simply hated him, always. When I asked Brandon about Diana's black eye and bruising, Brandon deflected the question and said Diana was clumsy, always falling down. I immediately knew from my experience with abusers in the past. Before I married Bill, that abuser would often say their partner simply fell down. Brandon came up with an excuse for why he suddenly had to leave because he was oh so busy, but it was a damn lie. Obvious lie, even. He just wanted to leave in an uncomfortable situation that he can't handle. I'm putting together the pieces now like a jigsaw puzzle, and things aren't looking good. I have a bad feeling about the kind of son I've raised. It's possible I've never truly known my son Brandon at all. It's scaring me, and right now I'm confused and just don't know what to do. Update number 3. Buckle your seatbelt. Oh my gosh, things have just gotten worse. Worse for me and worse for everybody who foolishly gets involved in my son Brandon's life. I don't even know how to say this because I'm filled with shame, filled with embarrassment, as well as sympathy for the alleged victim. Because I have a bad feeling the allegations are true, and, the timing simply could not be worse. I'll cut right to the chase and fill you in. Diana, she's come forward accusing Brandon of assault and abuse, and Brandon was arrested. According to Brandon, the cops did not even ask him for his side of the story, but who could blame them? The cops probably saw Diana's bruises, and clearly, like I did. Not to mention, this was not Brandon's first rodeo with the police. There were more than a few times in the past when Bill would have to pony up the bail money for Brandon to get bailed out of jail after doing something stupid. And our son never learned his lesson because Bill would always bail him out. And instead of making him pay for his actions, he just let him out. I spoke to Brandon in jail after the arrest, and of course he denies everything. Look, I'm his mom. I love my boy. He was my little baby boy at one point, and he meant the world to me. I want so greatly to give him the benefit of the doubt and believe his word, but I also know my son. Brandon is deceptive. Brandon is a liar. Brandon is a manipulator. Hell, a master manipulator. He would never take the blame for any of his mistakes, so why would I expect him to start now? The thing is, guys, I've still got the letter from Bill and the establishments that say, Brandon's history of abuse of all that sort, but I don't want to hand over this letter to the authorities and seal my son's fate forever. And if there's even a shadow of doubt that this allegation isn't true, this is just so damn hard for me. Update number 4, 1 week later. Hey guys, it's been a rough day for me. Heck, it's been a rough several weeks. The kind words and constructive, thoughtful comments I've been receiving from you all have helped me keep going throughout all this traumatic experience, and I feel like I'm living in a fog. I kept getting comments from people encouraging me to reach out to my estranged daughter Bella to discuss the matter regarding Brandon and his past. I knew it would be hard at this point to reach out, and I figured Bella would tell me that she was too busy to talk. I've felt Bella secretly hated me and her father for a long time, but I figured this was important enough. After all, Bill had just passed away, and I had only spoken to Bella once since his passing. I was hoping that she would have time for me for once. Much to my surprise, Bella answered the phone and asked me what was going on. So, I did it. I decided I'm going to lay out to her, point blank. I told her about Bill's letter, and how he didn't leave any inheritance to Brandon because Brandon abused a girl when she was a teenager. Bella was not surprised at all about this, and, I think this was a bad sign from the very start. Then I told Bella the news about Brandon being accused again. I told her about Diana's black eye and bruises and the recent allegations that landed Brandon behind bars. Again, Bella was not surprised or shocked. I had a bad feeling in my gut, and I asked Bella if she had any feelings about this. Bella came clean that Brandon had harassed her when they were kids. She told me about Brandon keeping naughty image materials in their shared bedroom when they were kids. She told me about Brandon gaining reputation in the school for being a creep, as well as abusing girls that he dated, and I began to sob. Bella, why did you never tell us about this? I would have wanted to know this. Now my son, your own brother, is sitting behind bars? Why is this happening? Mom, I tried to tell you and Dad about this, but... What? Yeah, I told Dad about Brandon a bunch of times. He would always tell me that he would take care of it, and nothing ever happened. Dad would always sweep it under the rug and never address the problem, Mom. Now, everything makes sense to me, and I asked Bella, is that why you abandoned us? Is that why you moved so far away? I never abandoned you, Mom. I just wanted to get away from Brandon, and I didn't feel I could relax in that house growing up. I didn't think Dad was on my side, and I didn't want to get you involved. It was just easier for me to sink into my work and move far away. We kept talking for a few more hours and worked through a lot of issues that we buried for far too long. After the conversation was over, I was kicking myself for not openly communicating with my daughter sooner. Now my life was a mess, and it was me and Bill's fault. I know what I must do, and it's going to be hard, but I must do it. Edit. Added on to the ending post. Guys, I want to add this here. This is going to be my final post on this update. Thank you again from the bottom of my heart. I could have never gotten through this without you. I've been updating you all just to let you know about, mine and my husband's biggest mistake in life. And I'm sure, not really, how I'd redeem myself from all the sins or whether I'd be able to forgive myself for raising such a monster. But he's no longer going to ruin any other woman's lives the way he did with that girl and my beloved Bella. After the phone call with Bella, I realized I had to turn Bill's letter in, evidence against my own son. I knew doing so would establish a criminal profile for Brandon, and I knew doing so would essentially seal my son's fate, as it would prove that he has a history of committing this type of crime, and which he was accused. Aside from that, there was also the issue of how this would look to the community. My husband Bill was respected, beloved, and I knew turning the letter over would expose my husband for using his power influence just to cover up Brandon's crimes. If Brandon had received help sooner and actually been forced to atone for his action, maybe Diana wouldn't have gotten hurt. I did not attend the trial when Brandon was sentenced. He was guilty. He was found guilty of every charge and sentenced to life in prison. I simply could not face him. I still feel so much guilt and shame for the monster me and Bill raised. But I know I have to move on. I feel anger and resentment towards Bill as well, but he's gone and there's nothing I can do about what happened. The one silver lining from all this is it has strengthened my bond with my daughter Bella. Bella's moved back to her hometown for a different job as we speak regularly and visit each other. I hate to say it, but this would not have happened if this whole thing with Brandon had not happened. So, in a way, I have to say sometimes there are silver linings in the places you would least expect it. Anyways, thank you guys for reading this. In the end, justice needs to be served, and it was, no matter what the cost. And by the way, the old case of my son abusing the girl when he was a teenager, it's being opened up again and he faces even more charges. So, it's safe to say he'll never see the light of day again. So the biggest debate in today's story in the comments section was, did OP go too far by giving the letter of her late husband to the police that basically put the nail in the coffin on her baby boy because he was a disgusting human being? And I would say 90% of the comments were saying, no, he deserved this. There's no telling what he would have done if they didn't put a stop to it right then and there. And if it has to end the perfect reputation of her late husband, then so be it, because this needs to happen. I want to know your thoughts on that, guys. Drop your opinions down below in the comment section. If you were in OP's unique position, would you hand over that letter to law enforcement and let them use that as evidence against your own son in court? Let's talk about it down below, guys. My name's Mr. Reddito. I narrate stories like this every day, and if you enjoy these animated story readings, go ahead, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a fantastic day, and of course, remember, it's cool to be kind. See ya.